The world around me grows quiet, and in this silence, memories rise. Before crossing into the spirit world, it is our way to look back, to trace the steps we once took. My path was carved by battles and bound by loyalty to my people, a path that brought me face to face with the long-haired chief on the plains of the Little Bighorn. Let me tell you how it began and how I came to bear a name that still echoes across this land. I was born near the forks of the Cheyenne River about 70 years ago. My father was not a chief. My grandfather was not a chief, but both were good hunters and feast makers. On my mother's side, I had some notable ancestors, but they left me no chieftainship. Whatever reputation I have earned, it was built by my own deeds. When I was a boy, I loved to fight, I recall. In all our boyish games, I had the name of being hard to handle, and I took pride in that name. I remember one day when I was about 10 years old, we encountered a band of Cheyennes. They were on friendly terms with us, but we boys would always indulge in sham fights when we met them. This time, I got into a real fight with a Cheyenne boy who was older than I. I came out on top, but he hit me hard in the face several times, leaving it bloodied and streaked where my paint had been washed away. The Sioux boys whooped and yelled, "His enemy is down and his face is spattered as if with rain. Rain in the face. His name shall be Rain in the Face." And that is how I received my name. Later, when we crossed from Tongue River to the Little Bighorn, due to the scarcity of game, we did not anticipate any trouble. Our scouts had found that Crook had retraced his trail back to Goose Creek, and we did not believe the white soldiers would venture further into the rugged country. But suddenly, the long-haired chief appeared with his men, catching us completely by surprise. "What part of the camp were you in when the soldiers attacked the lower end?" someone asked me once. "I had been invited to a feast at one of the young men's lodges," I explained, "a sort of club. There was a warrior making preparations to go against the Crows, and I had decided to go as well. But then, while I was eating, we heard the war cry. We all rushed outside and saw a warrior racing in from the lower camp, giving the warning as he came. Then we heard the soldiers' guns, a sound that was different from ours in battle. I ran to my teepee and seized my gun, a bow, and a quiver full of arrows. I already had my stone war club, something we often carried as an ornament. Just as I was about to set out to meet Reno, a group of soldiers appeared nearly opposite us, at the edge of a long line of cliffs across the river. All of us who were mounted and ready immediately started down the stream toward the ford. There were Ogalalas, Minneconjous, Cheyennes, and some Unkpapas among us, and those around me seemed to be mostly very young men. "Behold, there is among us a young woman," I shouted. "Let no young man hide behind her garment." I knew those words would make the young men brave. The woman was Tashenamani, or Moving Robe, whose brother had just been killed in the fight with 3 stars. Holding her brother's war staff over her head and leaning forward on her charger, she looked as beautiful as a bird. Always, when there is a woman in the charge, the warriors strive with each other to show their valor. The foremost warriors had nearly surrounded the white men, and more were continually crossing the stream. The soldiers had dismounted and were firing into the camp from the top of the cliff. "My friend, was Sitting Bull in this fight?" someone once inquired of me. "I did not see him there," I replied, but I learned afterward that he was among those who met Reno, some 3 or 4 miles from Custer's position. Later, he joined the attack upon Custer, but he was not among the first to arrive. When the soldiers found themselves surrounded on 2 sides, with the river on the 3rd, the command came to charge. There were many very young men, some of whom held only a war staff or a stone war club, who plunged into the column, knocking men over and scattering their horses. The soldiers had mounted and started back, but when the attack began, they dismounted again and separated into several divisions, facing different ways. They fired as quickly as they could load their guns, while we mainly used arrows and war clubs. Among our people, there seemed to be two movements. One group moved continuously in a circle around the soldiers, while another rode directly into and through their troops. Some of the soldiers remounted and fled along the ridge toward Reno's position, but they were pursued by our warriors, like hundreds of blackbirds after a hawk. A larger group remained together at the upper end of a little ravine and fought bravely until they were cut to pieces. I had always thought white soldiers were cowards, but after that day, I gained a great respect for their bravery. It is generally said that a young man with only a war staff broke through the column and knocked down the leader early in the fight. We assumed he was the leader because he stood in full view, swinging his big knife, sword over his head, and shouting. Someone unknown later shot the chief, and he was probably killed as well, for if not, he would have called others to witness his survival. So no one knows for certain who killed the long-haired chief, General Custer. After the first rush, we counted coups as usual on the bodies of the fallen. You know, 4 coups can be counted on the body of an enemy, and whoever counts the first one is entitled to the first feather. There was an Indian here named Appearing Elk who died recently, I continued. He was slightly wounded in the charge. He had some of the long-haired chief's weapons, and the people would joke after we came onto the reservation that Appearing Elk must have killed the chief because he had his sword. But the scramble for plunder didn't start until all were dead. I do not think he killed Custer, and if he had, he would have claimed it immediately after the fight. Many lies have been told of me, I added. Some say that I killed the chief, others that I cut out the heart of his brother, Tom Custer, because he had caused me to be imprisoned. Why, in that fight, the excitement was so great that we scarcely recognized our closest friends. Everything was done like lightning. After the battle, we young men were chasing horses all over the prairie, while the old men and women plundered the bodies. If any mutilating was done, it was by the elders. Since we came onto the reservation, I have lived peaceably. No one can say that Rain in the Face has broken the rules of the Great Father. I fought for my people and my country. When we were conquered, I remained silent, as a warrior should. Rain in the Face was killed when he put down his weapons before the Great Father. His spirit was gone then, only his poor body lived on, but now it is almost ready to lie down for the last time. Ho he chetu. As Rain in the Face reflects on his life and battles, let his story remind us of the legacy, the honor, and the voices that still echo through history. If you want to hear more stories that delve into the past with vivid, first-hand accounts, make sure to subscribe to History Addict and stay tuned for more.